All right, I am back for my fourth and final review of Ned Blackhawk's The Rediscovery of America. In this video, I'm going to be going over a big chunk, chapters 9 through 12, so let's dive right in. Okay, chapter 9, Cold War and Indigenous Rights. So in this time, we are looking at the post-World War II era. A large number of Native Americans served in this war, which of course increased their demands for civil rights and recognition. We saw this a lot with Black people as well. If they're being asked to serve a country that doesn't respect or treat them equally, they're gonna demand that respect and equality because they're fighting and dying for that country. In this era, we also saw some termination policy. The U.S. government was trying to end federal recognition of tribes, essentially cutting off resources and support to Indigenous people, to tribes. There was a lot of urban relocation going on at this time. There were government programs that were encouraging and incentivizing Native Americans to move to cities, which resulted in a loss of cultural ties due to them leaving their native lands again after the initial relocation, and also led to economic struggles. A key theme that we see throughout this book time and time again is the Native resistance. The National Congress of American Indians, or the NCAI, alongside other groups, fought against the termination of these policies and pushed for tribal sovereignty. Moving into chapter 10, the Red Power movement. So, inspired by civil rights movements, Native activists organized sit-ins, occupations, and protests to try and advocate for their needs, needs and wants and wishes. In 1969, there was the Alcatraz occupation. Native activists occupied the Alcatraz Island, asserting treaty rights and demanding recognition for them. Shortly after that, 1973, AIM, the American Indian Movement, led high-profile protests like the Trail of Broken Treaties, as well as the Wounded Knee occupation, which are huge civil rights. These were really, really important events for the rights of natives in our country. Alongside that, there are some policy shifts going on. The activism that was going on pressured the federal government to shift toward self-determination policies, which created and restored some tribal governance rights. Chapter 11, Tribal Sovereignty and Economic Development. So shortly after the creation of AIM, we're in the self-determination era. So the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act of 1975 allowed tribes to govern themselves more independently and be recognized as independent nations from and separate from the United States. This is where the gaming industry and casinos comes into play for Native peoples. Tribal casinos became a major source of revenue and economic freedom and empowerment for Native people. There were some challenges, of course. The economic benefits that were distributed from the federal government were not evenly distributed. And legal battles over sovereignty and land rights persisted and still persist to this day. And there has been a cultural revival of Indigenous people's cultures. There's been a greater autonomy supporting of the revival of Native languages and traditions In the book, he touches on this, and also now to this day, there are many tribes who are threatened by the loss of potentially losing their native language due to boarding schools and assimilation. And so that's really incentivized a lot of natives to protect and learn and teach their culture to save it because it's threatened. And then lastly, chapter 12, Indigenous Futures. So as far as like political influence, Native Americans gained more political representation and influence at the national level and the state level of governments. There's some environmental justice that goes on in the chapter 12. The tribes, with how connected that natives are to the land and the appreciation and respect that they have for the land, they have played a key role in protecting natural resources, as well as opposing harmful developmental projects. Again, kind of what I was speaking to about cultural revival in chapter 11, education and cultural preservation is also discussed in this chapter. Newer investments in native-run schools and language programs to help strengthen cultural identity and to preserve their culture and their language. And of course, as all minorities face, there are still ongoing challenges. Health disparities, poverty. I read a statistic the other day, believe it or not, Native Americans are the poorest minority out of all minorities here in America. That's still an issue. And legal disputes over land and water rights still remain significant issues to this day. So, in conclusion, these chapters highlight the resilience and adaptability of Native American communities in the face of ongoing challenges, from, the struggles against termination and forced relocation and the post-World War II era to the rise of activism through the Red Power movement. Native peoples have fought to reclaim sovereignty and their cultural identity. This shift toward self-determination and the growth of tribal economies, especially through the gaming industry, through casinos, have strengthened the native governance, and has strengthened their ability to revive their culture. And again, despite issues like environmental justice, health disparities, and legal battles, all of these issues still continue to shape Indigenous futures. And all we can do as white people living in America is continue to educate ourselves about the history of Native peoples, how they have been affected in the past, and how they're still being affected today. The biggest weapon is knowledge. Knowledge is power. And so I encourage anyone that watches this to read this book, Ned Blackhawk, The Rediscovery of America. It has been enlightening, to say the least. I definitely received a whitewashed version of history growing up. And so I really appreciate having true knowledge, hearing both sides of the story as far as history goes. And I encourage any viewers to do the same. Thanks. Bye.